epiphenomena. So by vague or an epiphenomena, I mean that there are two basic paradigms. One is that the body is the main thing, and the soul is perhaps there, may not be there. Maybe it's a glandular secretion. Maybe it's a pineal gland. Maybe it is or it is not. That is one approach. And that approach has led to a certain kind of development in every field. In psychology, of course, which is the subject today, but in science, in art, in politics, in administration, in medicine, in a worldview, in self-view, and everywhere, economics, everywhere. And the other approach, which has led to a very different kind of self-view and worldview, is that we are primarily a spiritual being, as Teilhard de Chardin said, having a human experience. So we are a spiritual being in our fundamental core, and we are going through the human experience, just as we have gone through other experiences in other lives. And just as we leave lives behind us, we have lives before us. So I love this idea of 100 years. Well, not only we should not need mental health intervention, but there should not be mental health at all. And is it possible? And Indian thought, Indian psychology says, yes, it's possible. And when we go to the core of that suffering, why do we suffer? And I know I had started with introducing Rupali's subtle understanding. And that's where the difference goes, because to explain all this requires volumes and a lot of discussions, talk with a certain kind of understanding which regards body as everything. But I found in Rupali that she could grasp these concepts so beautifully. And not only she could grasp, she is into practicing them. So it's not just a theoretical thing for her. And that's why for an Indian psychology-oriented program, the psychologist, the teacher, and whatever you may call it, counselor or mentor, is himself his own laboratory. He must himself become his own laboratory. Just before I was coming here, I had a very interesting little, beautiful, small little incident which I would like to share. So I had a phone call from a very, very, very dear child whom, exceptionally developed. And this child had a bit of a problem, and it was about the mind playing this way, that way. And I had 3 minutes to come here and connect to the webinar. So I just asked her one thing, 12-year-old child. So I said, see, let's do one thing. Just be very quiet, very quiet, very quiet. And this child is exceptional. She followed it. She said, just feel in your heart. So what do you feel in your heart? Do you think you're right? Do you think you're not right? What does your heart say? And I could see that she's become very quiet. And then I told her, you don't need to share with anyone, because it's between you and the divine. And within a short, maybe half a minute, she burst into a beautiful smile. And I said, keep it with yourself. Now, this is something which I have learned from one of the mother's, not only writings, but real life examples, where she would tell a person that feel in your heart, the truth within your heart. And if you ask the person to speak about it, then it gets falsified. Because there is a tendency of the human mind, when we are speaking to someone, we automatically tend to either justify, color it just that little bit, just a little polish. So when we speak to the heart and when we look deep inside, we see it as it is told in Indian psychology, it is the seat of dharma. Deep heart doesn't lie. There is, of course, a surface heart, which is as prone to lying as everything else, but deep within the heart, and so easy to connect with that heart. And that's what we have missed out. As I keep saying several times, it is a civilizational failure or a civilizational disease that we don't know how to love. In fact, we have suppressed love so much that we have become too rational, too analytical human beings, that we have forgotten the core of creation. And that core is love all over creation. The love that binds the star, the famous wonderful thing of Dante, where he goes through all the, divine comedy, where he goes through all the planes, and at the end he has received help from one of his friends who has departed, Beatrice. and he sees her as a divine mother. It's a very long, beautiful, fascinating story. And I'm resisting the temptation to recount it. People can read it. And at the end, he asks her, "Why did you come to help me?" In fact, he meets Virgil, and Virgil says, "I cannot help you beyond a point." Virgil is a extremely, he wrote the longest epic Aeneid. So in any language, of course, in Sanskrit, it's the longest is Mahabharata. This is the second longest. And if you take English, it is Sure with the Savitri. So he says, "I can't take you beyond." So he says, "Who will take me beyond?" He says, "Beatrice." Now, Beatrice is a simple village girl. And when he meets us, he is surprised that, "How come you?" He says, "Yes, I am here to take you. I have been sent by the great Trinity, the triune one, Sachidanand." And he says, "But why did you come to help me?" She says very simply, "Because of love." And then she explains, "Love that has woven the stars." So you see, we have forgotten this core and we suffer. And deep within man, this anguish, this suffering, this loneliness, this boredom, and to compensate for this boredom. I often hear today itself, I had uh, not client, now I don't have clients that way, but somebody who just said that, he has a heartbreak and he is suffering, he's feeling very lonely. So I just said, you see, you still can love. So love all life that is around you. Love the plants, love the trees, love the breeze around you, love the sun, love the animals, love human beings. There's so much love to give, and so much love. When we give a little bit, the whole universe comes back. But humanity today is suffering a lot because of that. Another cause, and that's because what I call as the lack of vitamin L, vitamin love. And of course, also vitamin F, faith. It is one of the problems of our times that we think either of reason or of faith. So we have the great divide between religion and science. But actually, the two can be beautifully interwoven together. This is what we see in Indian psychology. Extremely rational at one level. Indian spiritual approach is very rational. At the same time, it has leaps and bounds of faith. Faith is the one that starts us on the journey. Can one ever start on a great venture without having a faith that there is a possibility of arriving? Can I start the journey to even half the height of Mount Everest? If I have no faith that I can ever arrive, there is faith, which is the beginning. Faith is that light in ignorance, which shows us that yes, it leads us, opens the path, and then we walk. And that walk requires many things. So, vitamin F, and above all, vitamin D. I am so happy and I must say, a bit surprised. For the first time, I am seeing this kind of inauguration where uh, on Saraswati Puja Day, which is Vasant Panchami, Saraswati is the goddess of creation. And Vasant Panchami, it is the day when spring starts, life starts to blossom. It's literally like a new year for us. And how beautifully it requires great courage, Rupali, I must say, to start it directly with invoking the divine consciousness. And this is something very beautiful. And it shows that you carry the courage of conviction within you of what you are doing. So, what really is the divine? Because many people immediately, oh, divine. And on top of it, she has used the word Twashtri. Asked her, how did you get to this word? Now, just for people who may not be aware. So, we know that there is a pantheon of Indian Vedic gods, and they have evolved over a period of time. They have not gone. And while in the Western context, the gods have been done away with, but you can't do away because gods are nothing but those conscious beings and forces. They are like cosmic managers. So you may close your eyes, but they are still there, which manage this universe, cosmic powers, if you like, want to put impersonally. And we may say that, well, how do you say cosmic power? Very simply, if we take it that universe ultimately can be resolved into a stupendous play of power, so there has to be one source of power, the powerhouse of all power, from which all kinds of powers have radiated. But these powers have their own resting places. These are the worlds, the beings. If there are no resting places, it will just go chaotically. And what is beyond the power is the being, the divine, the Ishvara and the Shakti. So this, of course, is going into the deepest, profoundest secrets of yoga. But just to come to power, stupendous dance of power. So who is Twashtri? Twashtri are the ones. Uh, they are the gods who made the thunderbolt for Indra, with which he kills Vratrasur. Now, some people may be aware of this legend. The legend of Indra and Vratrasur I have found so interesting in both yogic journey as well as the journey of human beings in their everyday life. So Vratrasur is the last demon that Indra must fight. Indra is the god of is the global consciousness. He is Sahasraksh. She can see all around. So Indra is in the Vedic Indra. I'm not talking of the Puranic Indra, but the Vedic Indra. He's Sahasraksh. He's in the Vedas. He's the king of the gods. So he governs all the other gods. All of them. If Indra wants, all these gods can start functioning. But there is, in opposition to the gods, forces that retard. They want to retard the original plan. And what is that original plan? Original plan is that the human soul must bring out. It's like a seed which must bring out all the latent divine possibilities inside it. The original plan is summarized in one single idea. Ekoham Bahushyam. The one wants to become many. And who is this one? This one is Satchidanand, his truth, consciousness, bliss, force. So he wants many, many, many of his. So this idea is buried in creation. And how does it become many? By tapas. Tapas means concentrating our entire energy and being into one single becoming. And therefore it becomes. Now that's again a huge subject. How does a seed become a tree? Because the tapas, the concentration of the idea in the seed is on this seed becoming into that tree which the idea holds within itself. So what is the idea within man? So the idea within man is that man, thou must be even as God. That's why the greatest, one of the most profound truths uttered ever in any psychological literature is Soham Asmi. I am that divine truth. I not only carry the divine within myself, but I am divine in my deepest truth. But it also, this idea is complemented with another, Tattvamasi. All this is the divine, the greatest idea. And we see this is how the Upanishads and the Vedas, these profound truths, which we have unfortunately forgotten because we have started from the other end, that body is all. And so we have not explored these recesses. Whereas Indian psychology, they said, let us first explore the greatest truth, the deepest truth, the most profound reality, the origin, the source, the base, the stable, basis, foundation of all things. And from there, so Indian psychology came down from spiritual realizations. So it understood the universe through a top-down view or a within-outward view. Whereas modern psychology starts taking a downward-up view. And quite naturally, it fails because if you are standing on the base of a hill, you can't see more than maybe a couple of thousand feet. But if you have traversed the journey and stand atop the mountain, you can see a much better panoramic view. So this is the basic difference. So coming back to a story, the Vedic rishis saw the human soul on a journey, which is an evolutionary journey. So Indian psychology, one of the most fascinating aspects of not only Indian psychology, entire Indian thought, that it takes into account evolution. And I think this idea of evolution applies not only to material creation and the vital world of plants and animals, but it applies to man a lot more. Because unlike animals, which are true to their type, but evolve into human being at some point of time, or rather they go through a series of mutations and then finally into a human. Human beings have this capacity of self-evolution. That's why we have education. Education itself is a tacit acceptance that we can become better. Otherwise, why should we educate? We should be happy with whatever we are, but it's inbuilt within us. And when this education takes a many-sided approach, very concentrated approach, then it is called as conscious evolution. This conscious evolution is yoga. So spirituality in that sense is conscious evolution of the human into the divine. Because human beings are meant to outgrow our human frames and arrive at a greater divine becoming. Proof all over India. So from the ages, right till date, India is one country which has preserved this great secret. And its implications are many. It means that that's our journey. And if we just remember, even remembering this greater picture at places in Indian psychology, we simply use the word smriti. In Isha Upanishad, there is a beautiful half a line. Om krito smar kritam smar krito smar kritam smar. Oh, will that which was done remember, that which was done remember. Just to remember that great idea which is leading us is so beautiful. It's like being like a river. The river needs to remember two things. Where does it come from? And where is it going? Now, these two things determine its course. How do they determine? When we remember the origin, it gives us an impelling power. And if we remember where we have to go, it gives us direction. And once we know the direction and the destination, we will bear through all the difficulties. So, what is our origin? So, if I say my origin is animal, man is a two-legged animal, or a worm, or nothing but a play of material forces working in the brain, then how much force will I have within me? Only that much which an animal has. And if my destiny is just to become maybe a little more decent, egoistic human being, who is having the average so-called normal human being, who is living only to satisfy his desires, but in a certain degree so that it doesn't hurt other people's desires. Given a chance, he will not bother about it, but maybe rules, regulations, they prevent us. And that's what, Freud observed, that behind human beings, there's an animal sitting. But what does the Indian psychology say? There's not an animal is our past, but there is a God also sitting behind us. And to release this God out of the prison is the work of works, which happens through an inner law of sacrifice. Huge subject, so I'm not going into it. Sacrificing the lower for the higher. This is how, and this sacrificing the lower for the higher is what is known as dharma. Dharma is that which helps us to move towards ever higher, greater, and vaster horizon. So it is something which is like entering into a, from the larger perspective, win-win situation. So we are on a journey where ultimately, if we understand it's right, then there is nothing like a loss. We are constantly moving from a lesser to a greater becoming. So in that, there are cosmic powers which oppose. They want more the merrier. You see, it's very interesting. I'll take a small little example. I have studied in AFMC, and we used to have people, obviously a small group, drugs are available, and they would go for drugs and all that. And sometimes me and a couple of friends, we would sit and say, look here, if it is true that man is nothing but a bundle of chemicals, then what's wrong with that? You're adolescent, 16, 17, so you begin to start arguing logically. What's wrong with that? If I'm just a bundle of chemicals, what's the purpose of really living? So some of us started like that. And you see, always when people go for such activities, they always want numbers. You must have heard gangs of underworld. And when a yogi goes to yoga, he goes alone. He is not looking for, oh, how many will come with me for yoga? He doesn't take his journey that way. Yes, when he reaches, as the Kena Upanishad describes, he becomes like the flower. And that flower, its sweetness, its nectar, its fragrance attracts many others. But he's not looking for numbers, because that's how pyramid of life goes. And it's very interesting that this mass, this inconscient wants masses. It wants them to, this past holds us back, even though within it is the foundation, the secret, because there is something in the past which has impelled us towards where we are today. So hidden in this darkness, cloak of darkness, there is still the divine impelling us through all the challenges, trials, tribulations, errors, stumblings. There is a kind of guidance hidden. So past is a foundation. To understand this foundation, this hidden guidance in life, which has led us to the present. And future, present is the material. Now, when we become aware of this hidden guidance in life, then we can make use of it consciously and go toward the future. So that's how Sri Aurobindo speaks about the subconscious yoga and the conscious yoga. So coming back to a story of Indra and Vritrasur. So there are cosmic forces which wants to hold us back. And there are manifestations of these forces in mental illnesses. We use the word depression, schizophrenia, this, that, all kinds of terminologies. Equally, there are forces which help us, the godlike forces. The forces which, for instance, to take an example, suddenly one day we feel depressed, all kind of depressing thoughts come to us. And people tell us think positively, but we cannot. It's the most common advice and the least followed advice is think positive. But nobody teaches us how to think positive. Everybody knows that we should think positive. Yet we are bombarded by a barrage of thoughts. We don't even know where these thoughts come from. We may say they are neuronal activities. It's absolutely absurd and nonsense that, neuronal activity is suddenly generating thoughts of all kinds in different people at different states. Well, human brain is a machine, like a hardware of a computer. It's software, which is subtle. Mind is a subtle element. And how this software has been programmed, what we call as conditioning, partly determines the kind of things which will enter or how the hardware will translate. Hardware is just a possibility, that's all. But the software, now in that software, can we condition and program it in such a way that it can go towards more and more positive or uplifting thoughts? And that's one of the reasons why study of works like the Gita, simply reading the Gita, you see, before the psychiatrists came into existence, Indians had the Gita. And I know so many people who came out of grief, who came out of so many things just by reading the Gita. Why? Because it reveals one, the profoundest secrets. If one wants one single uh, stopper to get all the material of Indian psychology without really, because one is in a hurry, not much time, pick up the Gita. And I would recommend essays on the Gita. Everything that you want to know about Indian psychology is there in a very practical way. Of course, the literature is very vast. One can go into the Upanishads and the Vedas and many other Puranas and Ramayana and Mahabharata. One can learn. I personally have learned when my students used to ask where to read psychology from, I used to tell them Mahabharata and Ramayana. So much more about psychology. So now there are within us these godlike elements, they are seeking release. This one reason why people are, one reason why they suffer, because they have deviated from the truth of their own being. And therefore they go here and there, but there is no counselor to tell us what is the truth of our being. What is it that we are seeking? Perhaps what we are seeking is hidden deep within us. That's what Indian psychology says. The joy you are seeking here, the money, wealth, your satisfaction you are seeking there, the peace you are seeking here is all within us. That's why we are seeking. Somewhere we have this intuition that's possible. Why do we seek perfect understanding in love? Because we somewhere believe it is possible. Otherwise, we should not seek. If man is just an animal, we should be looking for only animal pleasures. That's what that kind of psychology leads to. But if we believe, intuitively we all believe that no man is a beautiful being. And so, therefore, we seek beautiful things from others, expect. Rather than that, we should release this God imprisoned within us. But this is not an easy task, and that's where the fight between the gods and the demons, the Devasur Sangram, takes place. And in that Sangram, in that thing, what is our role? They are fighting these forces. Our role is to make the choices. So the importance of choices, prayers and shreyas. There is a choice which will puts us on the side of the gods. And there is a choice which puts us on the side of the titans. I have a role to play. This role is about making the choices. And according to the choice, the journey and the path, the challenges, the difficulties, and all this opens. So the last leg of this journey is when the highest and the lowest are face to face. That's Indra and Vritrasur. Now, Indra is trying everything, but he cannot. He needs a weapon because Vritrasur has all kinds of boons. That story is symbolic. Not going into that. Many such stories are very, very interesting symbolically, like the Angiras and the cows legend. But anyways, so then ultimately, Vajra is made for Indra by Twashtri. He is a fashioner. He makes forms. But what is the significance of this? It's made out of these samudra fame, Thunderbolt is made out of all that the sea throws out. Just imagine what a symbolic story. All that it would regard as waste, you can't do anything with it. And that is turned into a mighty weapon for Indra to cleave the den and slay the demon called Vitrasur. Now look at this story. This is a story of Twashtri is empowering the gods. If you translate into our human language, it is empowering the god-like elements. Why? Because we have not nourished them. It's the tragedy of the uh, last couple of centuries that we have gone entirely followed the extremely materialistic uh, gospel. So we have impoverished, malnourished the spiritual elements within us. So we don't have the strength, the courage, the wisdom to fight all the darkness. We have been besieged by a dark, worldview, and no wonder. You see, when you read these existentialist books and some others, it's such a dark picture that is painted. Quite naturally, if man is nothing but a dignified animal, if there's nothing in this world except matter, then no doubt life is dark. So the more we cut off from our spiritual element, the more we suffer. The more we are anguished, we go to doctors who don't know this deeper aspect of the whole story, because they are also trained, unfortunately, in the standard way. So they give drugs, they use some kind of counseling methods. But ultimately, this suffering is an existential angst in the higher sense, not existential philosophy, but the deeper godlike element, the divine who is hidden within us, imprisoned God, seeking release. And just like when a bird in a cage, it's all right, happy when it is small. But imagine if it's not an ordinary bird, but a swan. As it begins to grow, it will feel stifled because there is within it the angst to grow. And there is the prison. So we are like that little swan and we are growing. And when we are very small, the soul of man, this little swan, baby swan, when it is very small, it is fine with the covering of ignorance, the prison of ignorance. All that it needs is little feeding space. And it is happy to just parrot out something. It looks good and people appreciate all these appearances. But a time comes when the baby swan is growing. That's again the story of that Matsya avatar. So as it grows, it needs more space. Do we understand now why children say we need space? Because this evolutionary boost, we are living in an age when there is a sudden burst of evolutionary energy. Now, there are many people who are unable to handle this energy, and therefore they are collapsing also. It's like you're trying to lift the giant bow of Shiva, but you're not strong enough because Shiva's bow cannot be lifted up only by Dehbal. It also requires Atmabal, which comes by strengthening the divine elements. Otherwise, you can't lift it. If you try by only Dehbal, it will collapse upon you and you will die. This is the challenge we are facing today. We have plenty of things to satiate our outer life, but we have plenty of things to stifle the spiritual element. The bars of ignorance are being strengthened with every advertisement, which assures you some comfort, some money, and whatever else. And it is only strengthening that many bars. It's weaving. But this little bird is growing. It cannot live forever inside the cage of ignorance. And therefore, it must step out and fly the vast, unlimited horizons. That freedom man is seeking. So the cry for freedom is not just, I want to do whatever we feel like. That's the dark way of understanding freedom. Again, we need space and freedom. This is the cry of today's time. But we have misunderstood this freedom. It's not the animal-like freedom of the jungle world. In jungle world, there is no rule. The only rule, if you like, is survival of the fittest. And fitness is not necessarily brute strength. It may be swiftness, it may be strategy, it may be cunning. But the rule, then human beings create certain mental rules. And then the rule of the evolved one will not be survival of the fittest, but the survival of the bestest. And there's a difference between the fittest and the bestest. The bestest is someone who has released within him the highest, the best possibilities. And the bestest in India was known by a very interesting name, Arya. Arya was not people who invaded all these bunkum theories which were made purely for political purposes. Arya literally applies, it's a word also in Greek, aristos. It is also a word in Persian. So it always implied the best, the highest, the noblest. So there is in us the highest, the bestest, and that which is the highest and the best, and eventually that is going to uh, not only survive but be the leader, that solitary, king. And nature will ultimately support, because nature itself has two sides. As the Gita says, there's a double nature in us. There is a lower nature which is more tries to bind us, tie us down to ignorance. The three currents of nature, sattva, rajas, and tamas. Not going into all the nitty-gritties of it. But there is in us then higher super nature, the divine mother who is pulling us. And that nature is constituted of light, freedom, wideness, bliss, sweetness, love, strength, all the beautiful divine elements. What those divine elements are, one place where we can find it, again, a single stopper is the Gita, chapter 16. So, what are those godlike elements? Now, wherever there are godlike elements within us, which are wanting to emerge, there comes the vitamin D. The divine himself assists the release of these elements. So there are two kinds of layers of humanity within us. One which is asuric, and this asuric lives in not only just an egocentric view, extremely selfish, which it believes that the world is for its own consumption, consumerism, utilitarianism, all of them are products. Extreme commercialism, deception, cheating, all this comes from this extremely egocentric, selfish point of view, which is the result of believing that man is an animal. Well, naturally, if an animal is animal, well, he lives for himself. But the other way is the godlike. And godlike way of life is where it's not just you, but a larger, not just human beings, not just your language speaking people, not just your state people, but there's a there's a greater human becoming, an evolution which is going on. And this larger humanity connects with that higher string. So we can use the word that there is a humanity, and they are both within us, the asuras and the devas. And there are, of course, human beings who are representatives, who are predominantly asura, and human beings, very few, but who are predominantly devic. So the asuric human beings, their influence cast a very negative impact upon human beings. If you meet, you'll be depressed. If you live near someone, your life will be eaten away. And this is not superstition. I can say this with nearly how many 35 to 40 years of practice behind me. 35 years of psychiatric practice. Yes, they're human beings, predominantly asuric. They influence and everything. And there are places which are like that, which are habitations of these kind of beings. But there are human beings who are predominantly Devi. They don't need to do anything. They don't need to put a magic wand and take you through a very complicated process. Their presence itself is liberating. Their presence itself helps mankind to grow. Their presence itself opens the doors of the prisons and releases the godlike elements within us. So may I just pray that I'm sure actually, but at the same time, that Rupali be a catalyst for the godlike elements in human beings. And may you grow and grow in such a way that just being around is therapeutic. Just being with you is healing. And I'm sure it will be so. And for that, I invoke the divine grace. And with that, with my prayers, Rupali, I'll come to the close of my presentation. I don't know, whatever it is, just a very brief talk, and all my prayers for a beautiful future ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alokda. Thank you for all the beautiful understandings that we have. So, I just want to end Alok's session on this note that whatever little that I know is because of him teaching in this way, and not many teachers have taught us in this way. So, of course, I'm still learning. There's a lot to learn and develop in. But one of the key elements that you talked about Indian psychology was how we are ourselves the human laboratory, and I felt that you being the mentor, you being my mentor and teacher taught me that the first thing, that forget the world, you look within and you work on yourself. So thank you so much. I don't think I can ever be express that gratitude. That would be enough. If any of you in the meeting have any questions, Alokta, can we take a few questions?
Yes, yes, of course, very happily.
If any of you have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask. In case there are no questions, can we move on to the next part of our event? And Alokta will be taking a leave here. Then, in that case, we don't have any
Yes.
questions. Okay. Thank you so much, Alokta. I will
Thank
next.
you, Rupali. I'm sorry I have some commitments, so I'll have
No,
to leave,
that's completely
but
fine.
all prayers and blessings. Yes.
All right, so moving forward, we will continue with our engaging discussion, and we have a panelist. We have arranged for a small panel discussion with very intriguing panelists with us here, who are going to enrich us with their lively discussion on the relevance of Indian psychology and spirituality in modern times. Of course, we heard Dr. Alok Pandey and his very beautiful insights. But now I call upon our three panelists who are themselves, they represent the three viewpoints or perspectives on this topic today with their own areas of expertise. So our first panelist is Dr. Chinu Agrawal. Dr. Chinu Agrawal is a very renowned psychologist in India. She's the director of Feeling Minds, which is again a mental health company based in Agra. And she's a licensed and accredited psychologist and psychotherapist. Dr. Chinu Agrawal has helped and she has trained so many young students, psychologists, professionals in the field of mental health. And personally, the little that I've known Dr. Chinu Agrawal in the last few months is that she's one of those more very helping and very giving persons who, who herself offers that, there is so much that we can do in this area. So, with that, I welcome Dr. Chinu Agrawal. Our second panelist is Mr. Brajesh Deshpande. Brijesh ji is not from a psychology background of practice, but his area of expertise is in IT. He's a business operations manager at Tech Mahindra. He has almost 20 plus years of managing business functionings. What is interesting and what is beautiful about Mr. Deshpande's journey is his own journey of healing. He has been a fighter of brain tumor. He has lived and fought with it and healed himself through years. And now he's helping so many others through his brain tumor support group, which is he has started and initiated the chapter in Bangalore. And I met him through one of our sessions, and his ideas about supporting the world is something that touched me and made me want to call him on this platform and share with us what we need to do as therapists. On the other hand, how can we help in these endeavors. Our last panelist is pretty young, but very, very, intelligent and very smart for her age, Miss Lakshika Malik. She is a research scholar at IIT Roorkee. She is currently pursuing her research in the area of Indian psychology, namely detachment is her area of focus. And Lakshika has, I've got the opportunity to teach Lakshika when she was in college. And ever I known her as a teacher is her brilliant mind, which is never scared to ask questions, and the subtle receptivity which makes her go the extra mile, read on herself, develop her own understanding, and take it forward. Not just leave it there, but take it forward. So, with that, I would call upon all the three of our panelists. We'll start with Dr. Chinu Agarwal first, followed by Mr. Brijesh Deshpande, and lastly with Lakshika. So, welcome, Chinu, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rupali, and heartiest congratulations. I'm so excited to be here on this occasion of the inauguration of your center and looking forward to all the great work that you're going to do.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, so how is it going to be? I mean, do we have to speak one by one, or are you going to have a panel where all of us will be speaking to each other?
I believe that we can go one by one, and then we can, slowly bring the conversation into more, exchange.
A discussion kind of a thing. Okay, so I would like to have an interaction with the audience rather than speaking on my own. So if there are people who can, be on the video and interact with me, I think that would motivate me more to speak. But to start with, I have had a relationship with religion, spirituality, culture, traditions, and psychology, all of them at once since my childhood. So I was born in a conservative Marwari family where we had lots of sages, seers, and monks coming into the family. And we have had discourses where they are sitting and they're talking to people, where they are, asking us questions as kids. And a lot of Ramayana and especially the Sundarkand was there in our family on a day-to-day basis. Even before the serials, which actually brought these epics into the houses. And the best thing about my childhood that I remember was Ramayana was not recited to us, it was discussed with us. And so my grandparents would sit in the evenings and they would tell us something, they would read us from the Valmiki Ramayana, the original one, and then they would discuss something with us. And we used to think about it. We were never told to just accept whatever is written. We were not preached. Instructions were not imposed upon us. And that actually, I think, has been my basis of being attracted to Indian psychology so much. And so when I happened to study psychology, and then I also went abroad, I studied a lot of Western psychology. I brought in, I applied it. But I always thought that there is so much already lying with us in our treasure trove of, things that has been left unexplored. And one incident that actually made me bring out these things out of the box was my attending a workshop by an Iranian psychiatrist who talked about stories as a vehicle for, healing. And when I listened to him, I thought that, we have got so many stories. And so many of them are therapeutic in itself. They have got so much of potential to help, especially children. And then I sat around. My father-in-law was himself a religious scholar. I spoke to him. Both of us together brought out so many stories. We made a list of them. We then started researching, and I came up with a paper called as Indigenous, which I presented in a international conference, the therapeutic potential of indigenous stories. And from then on, my journey began. I picked up Bhagavad Gita as my first resource to understand what is it happening over here. There is this demotivated, demoralized, depressed, anxious Arjun who is seeking counsel and who goes and speaks to Lord Krishna and says that, I'm not feeling like fighting. These are my own people. I don't want to go ahead and have this war. I don't know what am I going to achieve through this, and I am just not feeling like it. And beautifully in the first chapter itself, you will see so many symptoms. So you can just open Bhagavad Gita and you can open DSM-5 and you can compare a text which was written or compiled, or I don't know how it was restored, has got the exact symptoms which are written in a modern psychiatry book. And how in a span of, let's say, 90 minutes in the middle of a battleground, the counselor was able to help this demoralized Arjun to gather all his forces and, become ready to fight. So there should be something that is unexplored that could be useful in a scientific way to the modern Arjuns, which we see all around us. And with that in mind, I started reading the Gita, and I was awed. In every chapter, in every shlok, there was a principle of psychology which was either already told by other people in the Western psychology, not knowing that it is already lying in the Gita, or there are so many which have the potential, which have the potency to help us in our problems, whether it is grief, or whether it is diet or nutrition, or whether it is just feeling low or stressful or whatever. And we even have a model of anger management in Gita, which is there, very, very evident. And so after Gita, then I went to the Upanishads, then I even went to Ved Sahitas. And what I understood of the intersection of psychology and spirituality is psychology aims to give a universality, objectivity to the human experience. We want to give a structure to what's happening with us, and we want to also give some, frameworks or concepts to understand ourselves, to understand others, to understand the world, and to help people to discover how they can navigate through their challenges using these frameworks. And spirituality, on the other hand, gives more importance to what is your lived experience, what is your subjective experience. And so imagine A baby born into this world opens his eyes for the first time. As we see in Hindi movies, they land up in a hospital and when they open their eyes, they ask, "Where am I? मैं कहाँ हूँ?" Similarly, this baby opens the eyes and starts asking, "Who am I? Who are you? How am I related to you? What I am doing here? What am I supposed to do? What are all these things? What am I supposed to do with them?" The basic questions that we have about ourselves, about others, and about the world, which make our worldview, how are they answered in philosophy, in psychology, in religion, in culture, and in spirituality, will actually determine how we go about our life. So let us say you ask, "Who am I?" So there's this very interesting anecdote about Adi Shankaracharya. He was just 8 years old and he was, walking through a forest and a sage comes from the other side and he asks, "Who are you?" So this is a ritualistic question asked to children in India, where they say कि भाई कौन हो, किसके लड़के हो, कौन से घर के हो? And the answer this 8-year-old gives him becomes the Nirvana Shashtakam. There he says कि I am not the mind, I am not the intellect, I am not the eyes, I am not the ears, I am not the nose, I am not the air, I am not the earth, I am not the breath, I am not this, I am not that, I am not. Then who are you? Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. That eternal bliss, who is Shiva himself, the ultimate consciousness, the blissful consciousness. Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. And this, who am I, when it is answered like this, we leave no space of social comparison. We leave no space of identifying ourselves with any material. We leave no space to identify ourselves with the negative, unhealthy emotions that daunt us, that actually aim to pull us down. And this is there in Indian psychology, unexplored, undocumented, unresearched, but there for us to unravel, unfold, and apply. So that's what I wanted to talk as a prelude, Rupali.
That was really beautiful, Shinu ma'am. I would request Mr. Brijesh and Lakshika to give their inputs and let's take it forward as a conversation more because I feel that's the mood of the event going in that direction. So maybe we all can participate and even somewhere, anybody from the audience would like to unmute themselves, share their views, feel free to do that. We are here not to gatekeep psychology, like I said, we are here to discuss, we are here to because we understand that when we say Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham, we are all that, right? So each of our experiences count. So feel free if any of you have at any point of time, give your opinions, share your experience, do that. Right now, I'll call Mr. Vijesh and Lakshika to go forward. Vijesh, you're not audible.
I think, are you guys able to hear me now?
Yes, now I can.
Sorry, some sort of technical issues. I have to face them every day. That's okay. That's a part of my role. But yeah, thank you so much, Rupali, ma'am, for your effort and the invite that you gave me, because I don't belong to the field what has been talked about. I know experts have been talking about so many things. There is a Gita in my house, which I got it from ISKCON, but have never delved deep into it. Okay, I have been through the typical learnings what we get on internet about it, but when it comes to typically when I'm talking about the kind of thing which I had to face, which was almost, in my opinion, it was like an exit and an entry back. Like almost I had been to the door, but probably knocked it, but it didn't get open up. So that's how it was. And I was uh, turned back to life again. So that was good.
Rajeshri, can I ask you to either bring the microphone closer? Your voice is going down.
Sure, sure. Is it okay now? I'll try to keep it like this. So probably it will, because that's the mic I have. So what I was trying to say is, like, I knocked the door, it didn't open up, and I'm back. So that's what I experienced. But what I understood when I had been through all this was that as a human being, it's very important for each one of us to understand the importance of that four-letter word called life. Today, when I say four-letter word, I know there is only one word striking everybody, but that's another word which Dr. Pandey talked about, that he said we have forgotten loving. So I understand, yes, we have, but what I look towards is more of life, because life is all about love. Okay, so these two words are synonymous to me. And life is important because if we have life, then we are able to do any and everything that we can. But in case life is affected, probably we may not be able to do most of the things that we want in the way we want it. So life is very important. With that comes the importance of, again, as we talk about psychology, because psychology is something that is set in our BIOS. I use these terms typically because I come from the IT background. And when you look at a computer, so it's very easy that you just press a button, it switches on, that's okay, and you start working. But if the computer does not have a BIOS, the computer will not boot. So psychology is something like our BIOS. It is there, prevalent, but non-existent. Non-existent to the extent that we don't go ahead and make any programs for it. We don't go ahead and do any kind of text in it. So those kind of things. So for psychology, we don't do anything, right? But we carry that psychology within ourselves each and every day. The night when we sleep and the morning when we get up, this psychology still exists. And each of us carry this with us the day we were born till the day we are here on this planet, right? Spirituality is the similar thing. And how I term it as spirituality is, it is more like an operating system for us. Like we have Windows, so we have Windows. In that you can use Office, so many applications. That is what is spirituality. But nobody uses the word as Windows. I have to switch on Windows. I have to put on this. I have to, convert Windows into something. We can't do that. And that's what is spirituality all about to me. Because spirituality is something that we cannot change. It has to be there and it has to be acknowledged. So every time when we boot our computer, I'm just going through that language for the easy understanding, because everybody who uses computer here will understand that every time when we boot it, we do see the Control-Alt-Delete option, right? But is it possible for you to just get into the computer and start using it if you want your computer to be safe? No. Control-Alt-Delete is very important. So that's where I say that spirituality comes into picture. Now, talking about the importance of both of these, yes, both of them are required to start the computer. And we, as individuals, are the computer who's going to boot up, who's going to boot to his life enjoy the moments that we are supposed to. So from the computer perspective, if I say create all the kind of databases, softwares, applications, presentations, videos, audios, everything. So those things is what we are also as individuals are doing, because every day we are meeting people, we are seeing them. Our face is a presentation, ability for us. Our ears are what we hear. Our eyes are camera, and all that things we can relate. But where it is all important is if any of these two things, which is the psychology and the spirituality, if they are missing in our life will be just a redundant life. It's just an existing thing, like ants do. There are lots of animals who are on the planet, but we only human beings are the only ones who are conscious enough to have these ability of psychology and spirituality within us. And as a part of a short story that I just want to share here with you, because 2017 I encountered the BT. That was just one of the phases. I recovered through it, but I wanted to make sure that I help people, because whatever that I faced, I understood by that time that there are millions others who are facing the same thing. But I was not finding any way to do that. And luckily, BTSG Awareness Foundation came to my help. It was set up by the doctor whom I know from our common city where Rupali and me, we share that. So we belong, we have stayed in Bhopal. We come from Bhopal. And this Awareness Foundation was set up there. And I proposed them that, if there is any possibility where I could extend help. And Dr. Nitin Garg is the neurosurgeon from Bhopal. He has established this foundation. Well, what he did was he said, please come on board. We also need somebody to help us. And that's where I just delved deep into it. And I went through and I set up the Bangalore chapter for them. Now I am helping a lot of people with phone consultations, with just giving them the hope that this is not a deadly disease which you have seen. It is curable. Just that patience is more important for you. I understand the moment when these, words like cancer or tumor, these kind of words, when they enter your life, it's like it shakes you up. It takes the earth away from your feet. All that kind of thing happens, right? But it's important that we as humans have to contain ourselves. We as humans have to be at the edge of retaining our own life. And if life is there, all can be done. But if life's not there, then nothing can happen more. So that's what I look into. And well, Dr. Chinu was trying to say something on which I just made a quick, a small analogy while she was saying. During that time, I just quickly wrote something that, in my opinion, psychology is one side of the coin. Spirituality is the other. And we humans are the coin. We have these two things with us on either side, but we have to keep flipping them depending on what role we are going to play and where are we going to stand for our own selves. So that's how what I term it as. I hope whatever I said is, in line with whatever we want to discuss in this session. And I'm keen to, take more questions and, interact with the other people. Thank you so much, Rupali ma'am. And thank you for choosing today's date, because what Dr. Pandey said in his speech was that we have forgotten to love. The most important factor which I figured out at that point was that, yes, we all have forgotten to love, because not only that we are supposed to love others, like in the sense of a girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife. No, those are just the, innate parts of those love. But there is something called as a very deep and concerned love that each individual should have, is towards our own selves. Because whenever we are offering something to someone, when we are in that giving mode, we are forgetting that we do exist. And we do it overboard without realizing that sometimes we are overdoing. Because this is what happens when a patient goes through his own journey like me, and the caregivers give it all. but the caregivers also need to have their own time, their own way of relaxation to come out of it. So that's what I say, that we need to love ourselves more than loving others. So thank you so much. Thanks so much. And I look forward to the other discussions.
Thank you so much, Rajeshji. It was a very interesting perspective because oftentimes in these kind of webinars and panel discussions, we have only the professionals speaking about certain, like I shared with you, we have a world of jargons that we live in, and we like to play with it, and we like to believe that we know everything. Right? But when we hear different perspectives, we also understand people, maybe they are talking about the same thing but with a different language. So the way you discussed about human being and the bios as the life as the bios, and where Dr. Alok Pandey was talking about these aspects of light which propels you towards evolution. They are the same thing, but in my mind now I'm able to understand it better because the picturization is different for different people. Conceptually the idea is the same, but as practitioners we need to understand as practitioners not just for the others but for ourselves also. कभी कभी जो आपने भी बोला about the computer in the BIOS, maybe I need to apply it on myself. Right? Sometimes I need to reboot myself in a very different way, right? So I feel that your perspectives are equally invaluable here, and it gives us a better 360-degree picture, along with what Dr. Chinu shared about her experiences and her journey into Indian psychology, and Dr. Alofan started with. I would now ask Lakshika.
Bali, if I may, I'll add to what Brijesh just said about, the analogies about the computer. I also have, while studying things, sometimes the computer analogy is so easy to, put things in perspective. Like, for example, I have said so many times, I have thought about information coming in the CPU and the data processing happening inside. So the Gyanendriya, the 5 input channels, where we put the data, and then there is the central processing unit where we have the man, the buddhi, the ahankar, the chitta, and everything there in the brain, and then the output, wherein the motor muscles or the karma indriya come into picture. And so, yeah, so as you said, that it just makes it easier to grasp.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Chino. Yeah. So that's the analogy I have kept. The reason, because see, it's very difficult, if I talk about psychology and if we just go deeper into it, right? So all these, the psychological or the psychic terms, I would use them.
And even the spiritual terms can be very, so daunting that people may just shy away from reading and
Right.
studying.
Because if I tell somebody that this came out from the smruti that I had and that came out from the shruti that I had, half of the people will be, not able to understand. But in my opinion, when I was asked that what exactly happened to you, right? I had my first seizure. So when somebody asked me what was the first seizure like, so I said I cannot tell you, because it was like just the reboot. So he said, what? I said, yeah, just logically brain cannot tell any other organ what has happened to him. Right? Other organs can tell to the brain, and then brain can inform to someone else that there is a pain here, there is a neck ache or whatever. Right? All this happens through brain, but when brain itself is in suffer, the only thing brain knows is to reboot. And a seizure is nothing but a reboot of human body. In common sense.
There is a joke wherein a car once broke down and there were 4 engineers in it. So there was a mechanical engineer, there was a civil engineer, there was another biotech engineer, and there was a computer engineer. So they asked, all of them. So the mechanical engineer is looking at the machine and, but somehow the car didn't start. Sab kuch ho gaya. And then they go to the software engineer. So he just says that open the windows and close the windows.
That's what the person is saying. Just
that's what
it.
you're saying, that, just rebooting it. At times you just have to shut down the computer, give it a minute, and then restart it.
Very true. That
Yeah.
happens, and that's the kind of thing, because human mind also, gets clogged with so many things that we ourselves are into, and we bring it to ourselves, right? Whether
Yes.
it is thoughts, whether it is thoughts about someone, whether it is worries, so many things around it, right?
It
There are
also
umpteen number
brings
of
me
words.
to another anecdote, if Rupali would allow me one more minute. Once there was this person who went to a temple and he asked God that, I have been coming to you and I've always believed in you and all that, and I've prayed for you, to you, but you never come to my rescue. I have had so many difficulties in my life, but you never seem to have come and helped me. So God says, but I was always there. So he said, no, I didn't see you anytime. So he said, okay, now you call me if there is a difficulty and I'll be visible to you. So he goes back. On his way back, he falls down into a well. And in that well, there is a crocodile inside. So he just catches something, holds something to survive. And he sees that there is this crocodile. If I fall down, I'm going to get eaten. So it's better I just hold on till someone rescues me. But then he sees that on both the sides of the rope, there are two snakes coming. And now he shouts for help. He says, अब क्या और invitation का इंतजार कर रहे हो? अब आ जाओ, मैं अभी इससे ज़्यादा क्या difficulty लाऊं तुम्हारे लिए? So he comes and he sits on the boundary of the well, and he's just with his flute, bansuri baja. So this man, he gets frustrated. Now you have come and you're not doing anything. So he just says, you do one thing, you just leave the rope. So the man says, but then the crocodile will eat me. So he says, then you just keep holding on the rope. So he says, but then the snakes will get me. So he says, then leave the rope, but then the crocodile will eat me. So then hold on to the rope, but then the snakes will eat me. So then if you have to do everything, what is my role? मुझ पे कुछ छोड़ोगे ही नहीं तो मैं कहाँ से तुम्हारी मदद करूंगा भाई? Let go of some things. Some things are just to be left like that. Everything cannot be solved by you. You have limitations. And this is the expanse of Indian psychology, where you are saying that there is something which is unsaid, untold, unrevealed, and everything has got a time. And the time is so extensive that some of your problems may not be solved in this lifetime. You'll have to come back and do the rest of the thing next time. So a long rope we have. Thank you so much.
Thank you
That's
so much.
was indeed a very, very beautiful story, Dr.
If,
I would now
if I
ask.
may,
Yes, yes, please.
yeah, I like to raise a question to Dr. Chinu, ma'am. Ma'am, as that Indian psychology is it like as somebody who is interested in it from a student's perspective, the realm of Indian psychology and spirituality for that matter, majorly focuses on the unknown. Like it's a journey where we're supposed to explore and find out what meaning is, what purpose is on our own. So, in contrast to the Western psychology, where everything is very well defined and specified, so, do you think, in your personal opinion, that focusing more on what is known in Indian psychology or spirituality will make it easier for students who are, interested in entering into this realm?
Of course it will. And that's why the efforts of people like Rupali and myself and some other people who are trying to work in the realm of Indian psychology is to, make sense of what is there in the context of the problems that we want to solve. Because things are there, they're lying in those books. But what is relevant? So that's the topic for today. How do we take them, bring them out, structure them, organize them, make it into a concept, a framework which makes sense for solving today's problem, applying them to today's problem. And that's what has been missing. Because we have had these texts, we have had these ancient scriptures, we have had them for so many long years. And what have we done with them is we have just worshipped them, that they are sacred and we should just, hold them in great reverence. But they are still applicable, useful, and useful in these problems and ailments for these kinds of, that is what is the work that is needed. And that is the work that has been started and that needs to be continued with a lot of systemic research as well.
If I may also follow up with another question on that. So, for instance, the conceptualization of self may be different for you or for Mr. Brijesh, sir, like for me as well. Like we have different conceptualizations of self. And if we try to then, try to define it, like you mentioned, don't you think it will make Indian psychology more redundant then and similar to Western psychology?
Yeah, and that's why when I started my input in this session, I said the intersection of Western psychology and spirituality is objectivity and subjectivity. When we want to say that, what you are experiencing, what I'm experiencing, what he is experiencing are all universal experiences, that is something that is having an objective outlook. But when we look at the subjective experiences of people, and when we value them, validate them, and hold space for them, that is going to, give them a kind of, that inner experience, that inner, whatever might be their level of evolution or wherever they might be in their journey, accepting them there. That is the difference between what Western psychology aims to do and what Indian psychology will come up with.
I would just, if may allow Chino ma'am to just
Yes,
add in
yes.
here. It's a very interesting question that Dakshika has asked, because that is something which I have been thinking a lot about in terms of how the definition of self. Because when Chino ma'am said that, when Adi Shankaracharya was asked at the age of 8 and he said Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham, neither the Aham Nirvikalpam Nirakara Rupam, and neither this nor that. Now, that is the beauty of Indian psychology, where you have a Nirvana Ashtaka. On the contrary, you have a Devi Sukta in the Rig Veda, which says, Aham Rudre Vivasuvishchara Aham Aditya Rutavishva Devai Aham, which says that I am all of this. I am the sun, I am the moon, I am the earth, I am the body, I am this, I am the prana, and asserting all the levels of existence. So you have the dual. So in Indian psychology, the beauty that we find is the self has been experienced in multitude of ways, and each one has been validated by experience. So one of the things which I find very different from Western psychological viewpoint, which Indian psychology offers, is Western psychology, you are given a theory. Let's say William Wood said there are structures of consciousness, and when you study those structures, when you studying structures, what are these structures? I know for sure there are so many students who have studied psychology who still can't answer this basic question: what are these structures of consciousness? Who will study, right? So because he said, okay, thinking, perception, memory, these are structures. William James says, no, those are functions. They are not even in consensus with themselves. Let's just put it that way, right? And then Freud says, well, there is an unconscious which has, all your desires and dreams, but where do you locate the unconscious? Sahi hai ya nahi hai? On the other hand, Indian psychology gives you like a 360-degree view, and it says you choose which direction you want to go.
Exactly.
You want to go through the Nirvikalpa Samadhi, or you want to go through this expression and experience of yourself at every moment. Your body will also be the truth. Your life will also be the truth. Your mind will also be the truth there. So you choose, and each one's entry is different. And that is so beautiful. As psychologists, we get this whole panorama to work there. One
Yeah.
client will go
So,
more towards the Nirvikal, the other one might say that that doesn't work for me, Rupali. I want to experience it at every level. Chenu Mami wanted to say something.
I just want, before I forgot, is the Shat Darshana, or the six philosophies of life, wherein one of the philosophies, interestingly, is a material philosophy, Charvak, which says, अर्थ काम धर्म और मोक्ष में से धर्म और मोक्ष है ही नहीं. There is only earth and काम. So you just come to this earth to indulge. So if that works for you, choose it. And you'd be surprised that Hinduism is, people seem to think that Hinduism is all about idol worship, but out of the six darshanas, four do not have idol worship at all. And even when you look at Gita, you have the cognitive triad of thought, there is the Gyan Yoga, feeling, the Bhakti Yoga, and action, the Karma Yoga. 18 chapters are divided into 666. And at the end, what Rupali just said, he offers a choice to Arjun. I have said everything. These are the paths you can take. And now you are free to choose. That's what we say that in Indian psychology, we validate every experience. And that's why when you say that if we set out to define self and make it, impose it on others, that is not there. वो है ही नहीं, ना वेदों में, ना उपनिषदों में, ना किसी शास्त्र में. Imposition है ही नहीं.
Dr. Shino?
Yeah.
I would like to ask a question from
Sure.
not a question basically, but like a sort of viewpoint from the younger generation.
Yeah.
Like you were talking about how everybody else, or a lot of people perceive Hinduism, and how everybody just thinks about like it's idol worshipping, or let's say extravagant pujas, or huge weddings and every no, that's not Hinduism. I myself, I'm right now 15 years old, and so growing up, I had this whole, my family and everything. You get this whole sort of um you perceive Hinduism in a way that looks like it is some sort of compulsion, or um way of life, that this is the only way that you will be living. So growing up, I had a very different perception about Hinduism. I for the longest time used to call myself an atheist, because I could not understand about, because my views did not match any of the religions, as people say. But
Correct.
I personally don't believe that Hinduism is a religion rather than a faith. And, that has helped me get closer to Indian psychology than I have. Because I've been actually going to Dr. Rupali as a client, and it was actually my first time getting into Indian psychology, or even hearing something that is different from Western psychology, because you're always told the same things. If you have anxiety, if you have depression, if you have any sort of mental health disorder, or you're feeling uncomfortable, you're always told the same thing from a lot of doctors. I personally have in my life gone to a lot of doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists, a lot of them. I have not felt the way that I have in 2 months than I did in 3 years.
Wow. And that's a testimony for our dear Rupali. And and I'm so glad to hear it out from a 15-year-old. And so we say awareness and awakening can happen at any age for anyone. And we are quoting Adi Shankaracharya when he was 8-year-old, and you are 15-year-old, and you are already aware about so many things, and you are awakened to the fact that, So let me explain this for a minute as to what is the role of these rituals. So when you go to study mindfulness, when you go to study other concepts of, accepting the present moment and being there, I think the rituals have a place over there wherein they're helping us to anchor our five senses, which have a tendency to flow into this present moment. So probably for a person who is distracted, who is not so evolved, who is not able to anchor himself without the help of, let's say, props. So we have got a diya for the eyes, we have got the ghanti for the ears, we have got the incense stick for the nose, we have got the prasad for the mouth. And so all these are props in that ritual of puja to be in this present moment. And when you have evolved from this, when you have practiced it enough, when you know that you know how to bring yourself to the present moment, you won't need that. This is how I understand it.
Very true. You said that very well. Just one part which I want to bring out from the things that I've read on the internet and as well as what I've understood. See, when we enter into the temple, there is a very standard ritual that you enter into the temple, and right there is a big, huge bell. You're supposed to ring it, which makes a big, loud sound. People say, why? There's a question, why? The question is very simple, which we don't understand. It's very simple. For your brain, there are enormous number of thoughts that you are getting at any given point. What the general study says is around 60 to 70,000 thoughts is what a brain deals in about a working day time, which is about 16 hours, the times when we are working, right? In that awake state, in order to get you away from that, that is the ringing sound that once it's struck, your thought is completely out of all those thoughts and your focus is on the deity or the God, whoever you're visiting. So that's how these things are built. Yes, we in the modern times have lost the roots to our history, have lost the roots to our legacy, what we have carried for, millennia, to say so, right? And in that, since we have lost it, so we are not knowing what we should do. Like what Dr. I think you were talking about, the river has to have a path, right? It has to have a start and an end. Dr. Pandey was saying that. So it has to have the start and the end. Since we have forgotten our start, so we are not able to focus where we should be ending. And this is what, Anna, what I could feel from the perspective of the question which you asked of the new generation, right? This is where the things are going wrong because, and I blame myself because I belong to the mid generation and I come from that. So when my daughter asks a question to me, why so? Sometimes I don't have the answer. And since we are not able to answer them, we are leaving them in doubt.
Correct, because probably they are asking the questions which we failed to ask to our parents.
True.
And that's why they never got a chance to clarify. And I'm so glad when Lakshika asked questions, when Anna asked questions, because Upanishads are all about asking questions.
Yes.
If you don't ask questions, the teacher doesn't respond. And so there is no dialogue. So there is no deliberation. And if there is this kind of deliberation going on, it can go on for hours and hours.
So we are facing this for ages.
Yeah.
I feel that growing up, like all of us have been taught this certain thing, right? In schools, in our books, in history books, science books, we're always taught this certain, curriculum. let's say starting with democracy and then going on to the Mughals. And I've seen that there was a huge chapter about the Mughals invading us, right? And yeah, which is a very significant and, you know, which is a huge event that happened in our history, and as well as the Britishers invading us. But I have not yet read about anything that involves Indian psychology in our books, which I feel that should be more included, so that we can get in touch with our roots and our country. Because I mean, we are in India, right? And I would like to learn more about the country that I'm living in than the country that, let's say, people call as a first world country, which I really don't agree with. I feel that, ever since I have been learning and, you know, experiencing these feelings, going to different places that hold such a significant value to all of, the people in our country, I have felt more positive energy and more happiness than, let's say, going to field trips and learning about, where historical events happened. So I think from our point of view, every one of us would like to get in touch with ourselves and our bodies and our culture and our religion or faith or anything. I know most of us who are of my age would love to, feel this way, where we are, mostly getting restricted to such, facilities, or let's say that we are being taught the wrong things, and all of this miscommunication leads to such a bigger problem that most of us don't realize.
Yeah, I am so happy that you're curious about the right things.
And
He's
I
very
just
curious
loved
girl.
and I just loved the way you articulated everything to the point. The reason, because we know that to a certain extent, after being an educate, after education, after completing my work, 23 years of my work experience, all that, I have realized that there is a big lack in our education system, which is kind of getting addressed with the NEP 2.0, which government has brought in, but I'm sure it is still a long journey to go. Okay. However, people like you, when they address questions to people like Dr. Chinu, even to Dr. Rupali, as well as others across, right? The point is that we see that in the society, change is expected first. That is when our politicians, our people who are driving us through democratic policies and all that, then they can make sure that since the change is expected, so the change has to be brought in. Example, just a simple example, which all of us saw. 500 years we have been struggling to get into the base realm of our Ram Mandir. I know it's a very debatable question to talk about in many manners, but the very simple factor is that it's a history that lied with us, and we were lied about that history. So somewhere we needed a resolution. We got that. Those changes are happening in India, and we do expect that it will happen soon. And let's say, if I'm glad enough that if I'm able to see those changes in my lifetime, nothing better.
We have
So
a
thank you so much,
question
Anna, for the
by
questions.
Kanika. Kanika is raising her hand. Kanika, please feel free to unmute.
Um, Hi, first of all, I'm very grateful to be here and I loved all of your perspectives. Lakshik, I'm still looking forward to hear from you. And so you asked a question about what is self, and like you all rightly mentioned that why do we have to box it into something like the Western people struggle with and they don't agree with any particular ideology? And most of their schools are in rivalry to each other. So what are we even looking forward to? A model that is crumbling in its own self. Dr. Alok said something interesting about faith, and he said the lack of faith. And this is something a lot of scientists all across the globe have been talking about, that faith is very significant. So I think instead of, even though the question is very relevant, that what is self, the question of what is faith and why, like Anna also agrees that something that Rupali ma'am talked about with her, like she did with me, connected to her and me. And even though we are of different ages and all of us are at different stages, something everyone has said has connected to me, and maybe my words will resonate with you. So there is an interconnectedness within us, which transcends, like you mentioned, that we are not animals and we are different species, and all of us have language, and that's why we communicate and connect with each other. So there is an interconnectedness amongst all of us, and the faith has to be tapped in, such that, like, even though we are called the loneliest generation, I have faith that if all of us have faith and can communicate it through with each other, all of us have the brain structure intact, which has shown that there is something that taps into when we see something or striking as something related to faith. So if that gets tapped into, and then the conversation that you get in touch with something deeper within yourself, and then, like Dr. Alok mentioned, that what is in your heart. So I think, and something that you should not communicate, because then the question itself dilutes. So once there is faith, and then when you connect to something deeper, the idea of what is self, I think, dissolves, because it can be anything to anyone, like Dr. Chinu also mentioned. So yeah, that was my perspective. Thank you for the conversation.
Thank you so much, Kanika. And for this question, I refer you to Buddhism and what it says about curiosity, about questioning, about exploring, and then trusting or, coming to a conclusion on your own. So Buddhism is a very rational philosophy where you see a lot of logic over there, and it gives equal importance to both karuna and pragya, to compassion and to wisdom. And so for faith, I think, rather than just believing, rather than just trusting, what we need to do is to question, to explore, to think, and then arrive.
Also, I would just like to add here a little bit in terms of faith. Now, faith is we understand it's an English term that we use. The term for faith in Sanskrit is Shraddha. Shraddha literally means the self already knowing itself. So deep within, the knowledge is already there. But your understanding is right now it is veiled, but I know it is there. Someday it will manifest. Yes. So a lot of inquiry also shifts in terms of. I'm reading a comment here by Dr. Shvantika Sharad. I would like to read it here and perhaps put my understanding in this perspective. She's saying when the self is Sachidan and when the self is also indescribable, nirgud, by niti neti, with no beginning and no end. Can we limit self in definitions? How can we limit self in definition? That's the paradigm shift in Indian psychology, which it offers, which I think Shrivantika ma'am has very beautifully said. You see, right now, the way we think is also, I would like to use the term here, colonized. We approach the subject in a very, straight manner. This is what it is, this is what it is, this is what it is. If you are, against me or you're talking in a different language, how do I understand you? We don't have the same point. And I think where Kanika was making that, remark, faith is at the intersectional point. It is not anywhere else because Shraddha already knows. It may be communicated through different experiences and through different languages, through different, metaphors. For example, Rajeshri used the metaphor of a computer, right? Alokda used the metaphor of a river. These different metaphors. However, they are communicating something to the mind that perceives it. So Shraddha knows it is there, but my ability to perceive it will change onto my modalities of perception. And when Shrivantika ma'am is making that, remark, I would say, yes, this is ideally the perceptual change of inquiry that happens in Indian psychology, that there is no teacher, no student, we are all inquirers. So Anna, Kanika, Rajeshji, Lakshika, Chinu ma'am, me, Shrivantika ma'am, all of us, we are inquirers. We are just asking questions to each other and possibly sharing our perspectives and experiences. Right? The same thing which I personally found in Alokda was I was allowed to ask n number of questions, stupid questions, share experiences, ask questions on experiences, and he would always explain those experiences to me and tell me, now you make sense out of it. Okay, you experienced it in this way. I'm going to put it in a more objective frame so that you are able to understand it better. Now you make sense of it. So it was always open ended. Yes, Vijay.
Oh, well, no, the point which you said that you are allowed to ask stupid questions, in my opinion, first of all, let me tell you, there is never a stupid question. It is only dependent on the answerer, whether what he thinks about the question. So
Absolutely.
there's no question which is stupid.
Absolutely. And I think we've had a very, very beautiful discussion. This is something that I've been wanting from the deepest of my heart, and I couldn't have asked for the best, anybody better than all the three panelists that, very graciously accepted to come here. Of course, I have so much to learn from Jinu ma'am. I have so much to learn from Hitesh ji. The conversations that we have had, they are very thought provoking. I have so much to learn from Lakshika because, trust me, in my classes, she is that one student who made me think twice, thrice, 5 times because she had questions. She always had questions. So, of course, Kanika, I've had wonderful experience, conversations with her. We still do. Anna is like you must have heard. She is just 15 and she knows so much already, and she asks you questions and very hard questions and very beautiful questions. So hopefully we all will have more such dialogues in future. And if there is anything anybody else would like to share as a closing note, since we are running a little, on time, and I don't want to keep everybody waiting on Valentine's Day. So
I just want to put one word here, just before putting it on, because what I have learned, and that's what I wanted to put in my life also as a part of my own learning. So in 1994, British Telecom came out with an ad, which was subsequently used in a Pink Floyd album. I'm a rock fan, that's all right. So I just researched a little bit of that, and then I found that. So in that ad, it is Sir Stephen Hawking talking. And what he says is very simple thing, which I know the words by heart. So it says like millions of years, mankind lived just like the animals. Something happened that unleashed the power of our imagination, and we learned to talk. We learned to listen. We learned to build things and communicate. Then there is a bit of a gap in that ad, and then all he says is one line. All we need to do is we should keep talking. So it's all important, because if you don't talk out, we will not know what is residing in your heart, in your mind, all those things. So speaking out is very important. And thank you so much, Rupali ma'am, for creating such a platform, and hope this platform does wonders in future. And I'll be ready to contribute in my own capacity, what all is possible. Wishing you all the best, all the great luck, and a wonderful journey with the Twashtri Gurukul. Thank you.
thank you so much, Hitesh. I would ask the Dr. Chinu and Lakshika to also give any closing words that they feel more apt to close the ceremony.
I would just thank you, Rupali, for this great interaction. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I would like to be in touch with all of you present over here. If there's a WhatsApp group or something, please add me there. And I would like to see how I can, keep learning from you people. And I was at Pondicherry. I missed meeting Dr. Alok Pandey because it was a very quick kind of rush trip. But let's meet sometime. So that's all from my side. Thank you so much.
Lakshika, would you like to?
I would also, yeah. I would like to express my gratitude. It was such an enriching and insightful experience to be able to listen to Alok sir, Chinu ma'am, Rajesh sir, and to be able to, understand your perspective. And I believe that as a student, uh, it will only encourage me to further explore both Indian psychology and spirituality. So I want to thank you on behalf of the psychology student group to, for taking on this beautiful initiative of telling us what is actually important and where we must also focus on. So yes, Thank you so much for letting me be a part of this.
Thank you so much, everyone. And I would just like to close on a small remark that from this point onwards, we at Twashtri are taking a full-fledged leap to introducing Indian psychology to all the people. Like I said, not just students of psychology or practitioners of psychology, but people outside the domain of psychology as well. So we're going to come up with a few courses in the upcoming months. Some of them would be online. They would be, some of them would be free, available on YouTube. Some of them might be paid courses. Some of them would be more in-person courses, which would be more experiential in nature, because we understand that Indian psychology is all about experiences. Dialogues come out of experiences, right? So in that direction, we are working really hard to come up with these courses with workshops for people, like, yes. So for people who are dealing with mental health conditions, but we want to address it from an Indian psychology perspective because, well, it is very beautiful. So we would like to do more intervention-based workshops, intervention-based programs based on Indian psychology, and we are looking forward to work with different institutions, maybe corporate offices or organization, whosoever feel that this paradigm is something now that has to come out. All our mental health conditions can be addressed. See, we are not saying Western psychology is not, it's great, it's amazing, but we know somewhere where it is lacking, so let us help there where it is lacking, right? So all the mental health conditions, so in the upcoming months you might receive a few mails from our end. Please feel free to write to us if you would like to collaborate at any level. We would be happy to think about ventures where we can come together, because this is the time that India has to reclaim her knowledge. And like Alokda said, it is not a matter of me or Trinu ma'am or Lakshika or Kanika working separately. It's a time of a great call in the history where all of us, we need to stand together. We need to come together, claim our knowledge, use it not for ourselves, but for the society that we are living in. Because the society we are living in is challenged. It's greatly challenged, right? We see every single day some suicide happening in some corner of the world. And I know because I've worked with so many young children. I'm sure Chino ma'am is aware of that as well. So we need to address all of these hard-hitting realities with something which has the solution, which doesn't say, oh, think positively or do CBT and it's done. No, it's not happening there. We know that. CBT in context of Bhagavad Gita is fairly a little different from the CBT which is taught in the Western world. I feel that Trinu ma'am would be a better speaker there, who has mastered both the ends. So perhaps one of these sessions we can do on that, right, Trinu ma'am? But thank you so much.
To inform the group, I'm writing a book on CBT from Gita. And we already have a workshop on psychological insights from Gita, which Rupali, I would like to invite you to attend this time. That is online from 22nd to 25th of Feb.
So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Reenu ma'am. Thank you so much, Vijay.
Thank you so much.
And all of you for giving your time and being present here. It's a very important day for us. And as the day ends, wishing everybody again a very happy Vasant Panchami and happy Valentine's Day as well. I hope you have a great evening.